Hey guys, today I'm going to review the Acer Iconia Tab 8, also known as the A1-840FHD, and this tablet is the best proof that a budget tablet doesn't have to equal a cheap tablet, and I'm going to show you why in my full review. Let's damn it! Let's take a look at the design and the build quality and start with the buttons and ports first. On the right hand side we have the volume rocker, power button. At the top we have micro USB, micro HDMI, the microphone, headphone jack. On the right hand side there's nothing but the micro SD card slot. At the bottom we have the speakers. Here we have a camera at the back and here we have the one on the front. In terms of materials it is quite nice. We have aluminum at the back. It has a little bit of give, as you can maybe hear, same as the Nexus 9, but it's not as bad. But otherwise it is quite thin, as you can see here. It is not the thinnest and not the lightweightest one, but I have to say it is a quite nice weight, so you won't say it's cheap, but also not so you won't say it is very heavy. All the curves are nice. We have a small lip around the display here, which you can feel, but it feels quite nice. The bezels are also very nicely sized, I would say. So in overall the device feels sturdy, it feels quite substantial, it feels nice, and especially considering the price point, this is very well built in overall. The display has a resolution of 1920 by 1200 and a ratio of 16 by 10. Text is very sharp and crisp, there's nothing to complain here at all. The whites are ever so slightly on the yellow side, but the white balance after all is very nice and pleasant to look at even for a longer period of time. Not too warm, not too cold, everything is fine here. The blacks, as you can see here, look quite nice, but if you have a little bit of more brightness and you are in a darker room with a darker scene on the screen, you will see a little bit of light bleed here and there if you are looking for it. But in normal use, you won't ever notice it, and that's the most important part. If you take a look at the colors, they are quite nicely saturated, not overblown, also not too dull. In movies you will notice maybe a bit they are overexposed, and that could maybe be a problem, but you will notice the display just is a little bit overexposed in videos a little bit. As you can see here, the viewing angles, you won't be able to notice it that much on the camera, but the viewing angles are fine, you only lose a little bit of contrast, and also the brightness in overall is very nice. So especially again, considering the price point here, we have a very nice to look at screen and not really a lot to complain about. Before I'm going to talk about the sound, I will give you a small demo now. So as you can already maybe notice, it is at the back and it is at the bottom, but the blocking actually itself isn't that bad, as you maybe heard. Of course, the reflection, as you can maybe saw, if it was lying flat on the table, it was a little bit muffled. Once it could reflect a bit more, the sound was better. But about the other qualities, the maximum volume is very low, I would say. I was wishing a lot of times for more. There is almost no bass, almost no mids, and mostly just highs. So in overall the sound isn't really good, and definitely the weakest part here, I'm not satisfied. The speaker positioning itself isn't even that bad. Of course, backfiring is never good, but the overall experience is really mediocre. Let's tackle the performance now, which in my opinion is a real highlight here of this tablet, because as you can see here, this is in the browser, extremely super smooth, and I will record this video in 50 frames per second just so you can grab how smooth it actually is. I'm really impressed by this scrolling, and it is everywhere that smooth. If you see Phoenix, for example, also super smooth. If we go into Amber, the same thing here once again. Everything is super smooth and you almost never have any lag. And even G+, which you know is a resource hog, even that runs super fine. And besides of maybe some lollipop devices, you won't see it any faster. And one good thing here as well, as you can see here, the app access times are very fast. It is very responsive, even if you use the recent tasks. And also PDF rendering works also very nice. You need a little bit of time for rendering sometimes, but if you give the PDF a little bit of time to pre-render, it will be smooth, as you can see here. It does resharpen once in a while, but otherwise app access times absolutely great. Smooth performance, very zippy, very snappy. As for the games, the things are a little bit different. We have the Intel chipsets, which isn't the same as all the ARM processors. So you will notice a difference because the games aren't as optimized. Some games look a little bit odd, they aren't as sharp, they use a little bit of different textures, and the performance is not completely top-notch level. I would say 85–90% of what the best can deliver. Maybe Snapdragon 800 performance, but in overall still the games are playable, no problem here at all. And as I said, the device snappy, zippy, fast, responsive and super smooth. Let's take a closer look at the battery now. A full charge needs 2.5 hours. That is quite nice for a tablet, absolutely fine, but the battery life itself is not so great. If you see here, that's just one example. I used up 96%, got about 18 hours of use and 4.5 hours of screen on time. That is not really impressive and even one of my better results, because usually I got only 4 hours. If you do maybe less extensive stuff, you get maybe 5 hours. And one thing I noticed, the more you actually use the device, the faster the battery will drain, because it uses always turbo mode, where it clocks the volume and the CPU frequency higher. If you watch more videos though, where the CPU doesn't have to go into turbo mode, the battery will last longer. I can't really say how much it would actually use, because a mixed usage, like I said, expect something about 4–4.5 hours, maybe 5 hours if you have luck. If you play games, the battery will go down really quick. So if that's okay for you, in overall it is not bad enough, so I would really make it a deal breaker because of the other qualities, but I am a little bit disappointed after all. So what about the software? We are running Android 4.4.2 and the good thing here is it is mostly kept to just being stock. As you can see here, this has everything, a lot of stock feel. They only did a few little design changes, added a few little things like enhanced video and also Acer Touch Wake, which gives you some options if the device is turned off. You see here you have a 5-finger gesture which opens an app or everything you want to, and the 2-thumb gesture. 2-thumb would be this to open into the home screen, and 5-finger would be this, which right now in my case opens right into the browser. You can adjust this as you want, and I think it's a quite nice thing. It's not really double tap to wake, but it is customizable, so everything is fine here. Otherwise, most of the things have been kept stock, and that is good. You don't get anything fancy, you don't get anything performance hindering, but you get all you would expect to get from a nice stock Android device. So in terms of software, I'm actually happy, but I also don't know how well exactly the support will be. Will it get Lollipop? Because this should be crucial. It doesn't really need Lollipop in terms of performance, but it would definitely be a nice thing to see. And just real quick for the XDA qualities or for the support, we have root support, and that's pretty much everything so far. If root and stock feel is enough for you, then it should be fine, but don't expect any custom ROMs for here to disappear, because this device just won't sell enough to get the developer's attention. But otherwise still very great. I think I've covered all I wanted to say well enough, so let's get to the recap. In terms of the design and the build quality, I'm absolutely pleased. For a sub $200 device, it feels very substantial, very well built, very well designed, so there's nothing to complain here at all. Same goes for the display. It is very vibrant, very vivid, has a nice white, is very sharp, and there's not really anything to complain here. One thing I have to complain though about is the sound. The maximum volume isn't good, the tonal balance isn't good, so it doesn't do just more than give you the sound, not really in a pleasant way, but it gets the job done barely. One thing though that is extremely surprisingly well done is the performance. For a sub $200 device, I never expected something like that. It is smoother and snappier than most other devices out there right now. It is definitely way more snappy than a Nexus 9. Maybe not as smooth due to not having Lollipop yet, but once it will have that, I think it will pass a lot of future devices right now, because the Intel chipset does a really good job. It never bogs down, maybe due to the power mode and the turbo mode it uses. It also drains more battery, and that's one thing I'm also not that happy, because the battery life itself isn't the best. I got about 4–4.5 hours out of use, screen on time out of it, and that is really not so good. It should get you through a normal day, and once usually my honeymoon phase is over, I don't use the device more than 4 hours a day, so it should be fine. But if you are a heavy user, you should maybe consider something else, because this is still a big hindrance. In terms of software, I'm absolutely pleased. It is practically stock Android with a little few adjustments here and there. Nothing that really makes a big difference, but it's also nothing that really bogs down your experience. So fine after all. So before I will recommend it or not, I want to talk about a few competitors out there. There is the Lenovo S8 that isn't really out here yet, so I can't really say, but it has the same internals, so it could get a pretty close competitor, maybe with a bit better build quality and so on, but in terms of price, it's pretty much the same device out here. There's also the Lenovo Yoga 2 tablets, the 8, but that one is something I can't really recommend because a friend of mine bought it and I tested it, and even though it also has the same internals here, the performance is the big issue. The display and the sound and the battery life all were better than on the Acer Tab right now, but therefore the performance was just very laggy, not smooth, not snappy at all, so definitely not the greatest one out there. Another one to consider maybe that isn't out yet is the Nokia N1, an even better Intel chipset, so and you get also Lollipop. So if all this comes true and also with the build quality close to the iPad, this could be the one to beat. But for right now, and that's where I want to get to the recommending part, the best cheap, not really cheap, but budget tablet right now is the Acer Iconia Tab 8. For sub $200, you get a really snappy device with a great display and everything else. And I mentioned the downsides. The battery life isn't the best and the sound isn't the best. But if those are two things you can live without, then this device definitely gets my recommendation, because I had a really fun and pleasurable experience with the device, and I didn't expect it, because I actually didn't even want to test any budget devices anymore, because they usually just lack of performance or any other qualities. But this tab is the best proof that cheap doesn't have to equal with a budget tablet. So it is budget tablet, but it is definitely everything but cheap. So it gets my recommendation. Would I personally buy it myself? No, but mostly due to the reason I already have a tablet. I don't need a second one, and I also are looking more for a bigger one, because with 5.2 inches of smartphones, I don't really have a need for 8-inch, even though it did a great job, and all the things I did on my big tablet, I did without any issues on the smaller one. So that's it for now. That's it for it. So if you liked my review of the Acer Iconia Tab 8, please leave me a thumbs up, subscribe to my channel, and if you have anything else to ask, just put it down in the comments. Until next time, bye. I'll be back.